to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I am a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. Welcome, 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 welcome. I had an awesome day. I went to a park near my house with, I met a couple ex-coworkers of mine there, and we had a picnic. And it was super fun. It was super hot, but that's my element. I love being disgustingly sweaty and hot. So I was in my element, and it was so nice. It just was like old times for us to sit around and just talk. And it was like no time had passed. I loved it. I'm really grateful that I got that time. And it boosted me. So I'm happy about that. And then this evening, of course, I had to take a nap. And then this evening, I did a little gardening because it was so freaking hot that there was a pot that I wanted to replant. It's a fern that my daughter had in college. She brought it home because it was dying. So I brought it back to life, but it just never completely filled out again because it was mostly dead when she brought it to me. So I don't know if I did it right, so we'll see. I didn't look it up or anything, but I took all the little bulbs out of the dirt and replanted those in soil. I think those are the bulbs that grow. So I don't know what I'm doing, but half the time I don't know what I'm doing and it works. So I did it again. So I did that tonight, and now we have Boris, the beloved bulldog, who is scared of the continued evening fireworks. So he's joined us this evening. He is at my feet, and if you hear panting, it's him. It's not me. Rest assured. So today I want to talk about character defects. And what the angle on this today is what I heard in my morning meeting today. That was from the daily reflection. And it was talking about how our character defects are rooted in self-centered fear. And it's not like I hadn't heard that before, but today, depending on what I'm going through or what my mindset is or how I'm focusing during the meeting, I'll hear and process the same information completely differently. So today it was like an epiphany for me that character defects are rooted in self-centered fear. So I thought, well, that's it. That's the topic. I want to explore that and see how that applies to my sobriety and my life and my relationships and stuff. So we'll see how it goes. Um, I'm going to talk about getting to that root cause and what that looks like, whether you believe in God or not. Because when I first did this, now this is very much in line with step 7. This is step 7. It is finding freedom from these defects. So defects of character. So when I first practiced step 7, I hadn't yet had a real confidence in my faith in a higher power, God as a part of my higher power. God is just a piece of a higher power for me, which is everything outside of myself is my higher power. That's what I call it. So I didn't really have a strong concept. I don't know if I ever will have a strong concept of my higher power, but I still was able to kind of do step 7, be introduced to it at least, and continue to try to work it and get a grasp of it. And as you can see, like today, I'm still working on it. So for those of you not in a sobriety program, we find ways to build ourselves with new behaviors by looking at our fears in the earlier steps. And by cultivating this relationship with a higher power, whatever higher power works for you, it does not have to be God. It can be whatever you want. Um, and then doing some major introspection um, during daily living. And it's really putting the steps into practice day to day. And the great thing about the program is that we've got like the meetings, we've got the sponsor, we've got the network, we get to listen to shares. And then I go every day. So I'm actually like going in the morning to my meeting, hearing what is the topic of the day. And then it's like, okay, go forth and practice. And so I have the whole day that I practice whatever it is. And then I go back to the meeting the next day. That works for me. I'm still sober. I'm not only sober physically, but I feel very emotionally sober. And that's what this is about for me. Once I put down the drink, I need to mentally be right, spiritually fit. And this is just one of the many principles that need to be practiced in order to get there for me. So again, whether you believe in a higher power or not, whether you believe in God or not, there are ways to approach this. And it is an action step. It helps us to achieve growth in character. When I first practiced it, I didn't know what the action was. I didn't get it. So I wanted to talk about that because I think that happens a lot. I think there are lots of people who go through these sobriety programs, go through the steps and think, I don't know what these people are talking about. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I wanted to share that out loud because it's okay. I wanted to be an example that it's okay if you have no idea what you're supposed to do. In these cases, I just kept going to meetings and I kept listening. I kept being willing to understand what I was supposed to do, even though I didn't know. And it's took years. It has taken years and it will take my whole life. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited that I get to nurture my sobriety my whole life, because wouldn't it suck if sobriety meant we put down the drink and we're expected to be okay with that the rest of our lives? That would be terrible, because our obsession for alcohol is all consuming, and it's like some people say, waiting in the parking lot doing push-ups. That's what some people say when they're in a meeting, like my disease is outside in the parking lot doing push-ups, waiting for me to, you know, get get off center, and drink again. So it's great that this is something that is available to us our whole lives, because it would just suck if it wasn't. It would suck. Life would be hard as an alcoholic if we didn't have something for all of us to come together and and acknowledge that it is a lifetime of recovery. So these character defects of mine are a result of self-centered fear. I didn't realize that. I didn't even realize that when I was going through the steps. Like, the steps are in the order they are for a reason. And what we do before step 6 and 7, where we're thinking about these character defects, steps 4 and 5, which are we're looking at our resentments, or we're trying to figure out what our role is. And what I determined when I practiced 4 and 5, 4, when I practiced 4, I saw a trend in my role in all of my relationships, my fear. What is my fear for this relationship and that relationship? Why am I resentful? Because I'm fearful of something. That is exactly what happened for me. And my fear was fear of abandonment across the board. It was across the board. So that's how it started for me. As I continue to practice the steps, I recognize that there are a lot more fears that cause my behavior. So when I'm uncomfortable, when I'm irritated, when I'm depressed, it's likely I'm fearful of something. And apparently I'm not the only one because the daily reflection this morning was about this. It talked about fear of failure. I also have like fear of judgment of others, fear of, like I said, abandonment, fear of pain, both physical and emotional. There are so many fears that are the root cause of much of my behavior. And these fears have driven me to act in ways that are not aligned with my values, even when I'm not drinking, even in sobriety. And in my drinking days, these character defects were just running rampant. You know, there was no check. But now now that I understand the relationship, really understanding the relationship is more complex. I think it's now that I understand that I have character defects. I mean, that is the black and white beginning of practicing this program, is being willing to say, yes, there's something wrong with me. For so long, I thought something was wrong with everybody else. But there are a multitude of character defects that have characterized my entire life. And they got even more, like, exponentially worse when I was drinking, because my values were undefined, gray areas around those when I was drinking. So this step 7, as we call it in the sobriety program, is about finding freedom from these defects, doing the work to identify them and uncover the fears that are underneath. So this is step 6 and 7, and the step 7 says to ask God to relieve us of these fears, of these character defects. But if you are agnostic, or you don't believe in God, or whatever it is that your faith or lack thereof is, how do you practice step 7? I think this is one of the reasons that I was not quite sure what to do, because if I have not really built a solid relationship with my concept of God, I don't know how to talk to him. I feel quite silly, honestly. I did for many, many years. I only secretly would pray. I mean, I still don't pray in front of anybody, but like I wouldn't talk about it. It was all just a secret. I didn't want anybody to know because it was embarrassing to me. Um, and so I think it's important for me to talk about that today also, because that's another thing you don't have to worry about. For agnostics, like this can be approached as a process of like internal reflection and action. Um, we're asking God to remove these defects of character. I had no idea what that meant. Seriously. I just didn't know what that meant. I did not grow up with some understanding of how all of this works. So I was really left empty-handed, I felt like. I wasn't quite sure what I was supposed to do. So I wanted to talk about what that internal reflection looked like for me, and how this all ties together between the character defects and the fears, and how we can address this stuff in a structured way to make the most out of the process, and in throughout nurturing ourselves and not beating ourselves up about this idea of having character defects, that there's something wrong with me. Like the process of looking inward and being like, I suck at that. That's not what it's like. It's more like I could be a better human being by doing it this way. And it's really about, for me, it was about wanting to, I felt like if I could be happier, if I could address some of these issues, then I would enjoy life a little bit more. Like, if I have this reaction to certain types of people, let's say people who just think they're the shit. Okay, we all know somebody who in our lives that we've run across who just thinks that they're the shit. I believe they say thinks that their shit don't stink, that type of thing. I don't usually talk like that, but we know who those kinds of people are. Well, I would react to people like that in a bitchy way. I may not outwardly say something to them and be rude to them, like abusive, like verbally abusive or anything like that. But man, I can be a terrible, terrible bitch and never even open my mouth. I can really be nasty to people. And it's not because I want to be nasty. It's because, like, before I addressed these character defects and stuff, I always thought it was my job to correct that person's behavior. You know, they need to know that they are my equal, you know, and it's just about my job to do that, to let them know that that's not the way that people should behave. So, it's just terrible. So this is just one example. And see if I felt like once I started seeing like, oh, okay, there is stuff wrong with me. There are things wrong with me. These are called character defects. And I started looking at, why do I do this? Why do I treat that person negatively because they think that they're better than me? Well, because I'm fearful that maybe they are. That is the honest truth. That I think that I need to correct their behavior because they need to know that they're not better than me. And I'm afraid that they are better than me. I'm afraid that other people are going to think that they are better than me. You know what I mean? Like it is unrealistic, alternate universe kind of mindset. This is the type of crazy brain I have. That's the squirrel that runs around in my head. Um, so this that I'm talking about today is to try to start addressing those kinds of things, because the more that I can not feel that way, not build that alternate universe that I'm going to live in that nobody else is invited to, but I'm like living and breathing inside this negative space, the more that I can stop doing that, the happier that I'm going to be, the better, the more I can make out of my life. The more I can nurture relationships, the more that I can nurture myself. Like it all starts with these core issues. And by being consistent and looking inward and not beating myself up, but going, oh, that's why I do that. Okay, well, let me see if I can not react that way. How can I not react that way? I should probably call my sponsor, that kind of thing, or I should go to a meeting. So we'll talk about some of these things about how I try to change my behavior. And it's a lot of, for me, it started out with this introspection. It's only been recently that I have tried to invite my concept of God into the equation, because I didn't know how to do that before. So I'm trying to do that. I'm learning how to be more faithful. Yeah. So the first part of this is becoming self-aware. I was just talking to Bailey about this on the 4th of July. Um, that's funny. It makes me laugh. The first step is becoming aware of your character defects. And I was talking to Bailey about how she has a tendency to be a little bit like her mother. We're just going to say that, not to throw her under the bus. So I told her, Bailey, the first step is acknowledging what's wrong with you. And we were joking around, but honestly, it's part of my program is to become aware of your character defects and then think about what are the fears that drive them. And it requires us to be honest and willing to look at yourself both critically and compassionately. And when you notice a character defect, pause and think to yourself, what fear is driving this behavior? And if you need to, it might take a little longer of a pause, because in the beginning, when we're behaving a certain way or we have some kind of negative reaction to other people, that reaction, that's why it's called a reaction. It's automatic. And we've been doing it for years. So untraining ourselves from that kind of reaction takes a little more than just a hot second of, oh, I'm being a bitch, I better stop. Like, it's not like that. Why am I being this way? Maybe I can, if I can address the underlying fear, then I can address the reaction that I'm having. For some reason right now, it's reminding me of the color wheel of emotions. Like, if I'm jealous, jealousy is actually a combination of two other feelings. And that was, I can't remember. It was like sadness and anger or something like that. I can't remember. But it's the same thing. Like, what is the underlying cause of this yuckiness? As I call it a lot of times. So if it helps, like, journal about it. And then when we're identifying these specific fears that are underlying the defects, reflect on how those fears, once you've been able to identify it, how they impact your behavior on a daily basis. So you're seeing this reaction, and that's why that pause is so good. Like, do I do this all the time? Like, is this something that is a trend in my life? How is it impacting my relationships? And again, this reflection can be done through journaling. Of course, talk to a therapist or talk to a sponsor. What's pretty fun is I have a great network of friends who are really honest and open. And it probably helps that I'm honest and open. So when I say, I don't like that I do this when, this is my reaction to XYZ. I will get some great feedback from other people who will say either I have that reaction too, or they'll say, well, this is what I do, and just having a conversation about this is what it's like to be me as a human. What's it like for you to be a human? It's just, I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for the complexity of what it's like to be a human being. It's fascinating, really. So spend time reflecting on the fear. What does it come from? How does it impact your daily actions and reactions and your relationships? And then this is when it turns over to action. What are some actionable steps to address it? So this kind of merges in with the last one, where it may mean seeking support from one of your friends. It may mean taking more than just a pause and actually taking a step back and practicing some mindfulness, or engaging in some activities that boost your confidence and reduce that fear. So, what I think is helpful in this situation that I've learned over the past 8 years in sobriety is lists. To make lists of, when I feel this way, it's good for me to do this. So for example, when I'm angry, it's good for me to do some really, like, difficult and a burst of exercise. So, lifetime listeners know that I do push-ups. And that's because I can't run. Running used to be great when I was angry or when I was really, really sad. I've talked to you guys about when I lost my friend and I just couldn't cry for the longest time and I couldn't listen to music. Like it was stuck. The pain was stuck inside of me and I almost didn't want it to go away, but yet I knew it needed to go away. I needed to do something about it. So I ran and I ran and I cried, ugly cry, but it got that process going. So figuring out what activities help you to boost your confidence and reduce the fear or counteract whatever fear it is. Taking these steps most of the time requires you to step out of your comfort zone, practicing new behaviors, even seeking professional help. I'm a huge fan of professional help because I don't know, when I get desperate, that's what I have to do. It's the only answer. I have got to go talk to a professional. And they always help me in one way or another. They always help me. So I have to get uncomfortable. I'm telling you, like, my growth and healing lies in discomfort. Almost to the point now that if I feel uncomfortable, I lean into it because I know that means I'm going to learn something or I'm going to grow in some way. The goal is to replace my fear-driven actions with ones that are aligned with my values and are aligned with my recovery. So practicing letting go by making a decision that I'm not going to stay here in this feeling. I'm going to take an action to do something about it. And that can look so different for everybody else. It can be, I've already given a lot of examples, but it can also be on the more passive, like meditation, visualization, God box, that kind of thing. All of these are ways that you can counteract these fears. And as a result, see those character defects start to minimize a little bit. And then there's this higher power thing. So whether you believe in a God or not, whether or not you have a higher power, whether those are the same thing, developing some sort of spiritual practice can be incredibly beneficial. And spirituality, I truly believe, is not the same as religion. So getting into a spiritual practice, that's what came first for me. It can lead you to maybe building a relationship or concept of God, but I believe that they're independent of each other. So getting on this gratitude, practicing gratitude regularly, meditation regularly, going outside and letting your tootsies wiggle in the grass, all of that stuff is a great way to ground yourself, to almost see that whatever it might be that you're dealing with is not all consuming. It doesn't have to be. Whatever may be pissing you off or something, Go outside, take your shoes off, and wiggle your toes in the grass. I guarantee you it'll do something to you. I don't know what, but it'll do something. And it's a great way to ground yourself, invite some clarity and peace in. I learned about that. Oh, actually, somebody said it to me like yesterday. Who was that? I don't know who I was talking to. They said, maybe it was Bailey. I can't remember. I know you love when I do that when I'm trying to remember something and I can't. um, they said like first thing in the morning to go outside and stand barefooted on the earth. It has something to do with the rhythms. I can't remember the word, cicadia, to something rhythms of the earth, and like as we're a part of this whole ecosystem and everything. So anyway, these are all great ways to try to, what we're doing is reflecting on fear, you know, reflecting on what's really going on the inside and what's causing us to behave in ways that we're not proud of. um, Again, I didn't really understand what I was supposed to do for step 7. I was not comfortable entirely with my concept of God. I didn't understand how to quote unquote ask him to remove my character defects that I had identified. Quite honestly, I don't think I had a great concept of what my character defects were. It wasn't until I was living my day-to-day life and seeing how what I learned in the program applied to each experience I had in life. Um, I I started to uncover fears that I didn't realize I had. I still uncover fears that I didn't realize I had. I didn't see the correlation between my fears and my character defects. Um, and maybe over the past 8 years, I have seen the correlation between the two, but I have forgotten it because I had an epiphany today about it. So, as I continue along this path, showing up to meetings and listening to other people's shares, I gradually begin to understand what relief from my character defects feels like. I have an example that I've shared with you before. I had a interaction with my boss at work, and he pissed me off, and I wanted to call him and tell him so. Everything in my being was telling me to call him and tell him how he was wrong. And I was very upset with him. But there was just one tiny little seed in me that was telling me that is a character defect. That is not what you're supposed to do. So I didn't do it. And it was against everything I believed and I knew, and I doubted it. I doubted this way, doing it this way, but I did it because I heard that it might work, and I learned that I can find relief in patience. I can wait out my defect. And so I did something I'd never done before. I did not get intertwined anymore in the situation. I didn't let it go, but I didn't open my mouth. I actively used my God box to hand it over. to quote unquote hand it over, let it go. And it took 5 days to write this down and put it in my God box. I was angry for 5 days, but I never said a word to him about it. And I actually had better interactions with him that week than because I wasn't just holding on to it. It's not like I was not doing anything. I was putting it in my God box. And when I was doing that, it was bringing me closer to my concept of God, actually. I felt like I wasn't dealing with the situation alone. It was me and my God box and my concept of God, no matter how strange and different my concept was, and maybe still is, but I wasn't alone. And so it was slowly chipping away at that anger. And after 5 days, I was gifted with relief from anger without impacting my relationship with him, with my boss in a negative way. So I saw, by doing this, by acting it out, even though I didn't want to, I turned off my wanter. I saw what asking God to remove my character defects meant. That's what it meant for me. I couldn't figure that out on my own. I had to actually practice it. My fear of failure and judgment was addressed with that 5-day pause. I just let it happen. It didn't feel good. I was angry. But I can't tell you how happy I am that I didn't do anything about it. Not because I was going to destroy my relationship with my boss. Like, he would have gotten over it because we have that kind of we still do this brother-sister relationship. So it would have been fine. But what I'm happy about that I did that is because that was the beginning. That was the beginning of me understanding what it means to trust, to have faith, you know, to stand down and let life happen without me. And it was the beginning of reducing my fears that have to do with me controlling everything around me and impacting how they impact my life and my relationships. So step 7 is about finding freedom from fears that drive our character defects. And I found that freedom, but it took me a while. And I want to convey that today, that I had to practice. I had to listen and try it, and listen and try it. And then I got it. I figured it out. So by taking enough time to look inward and stop talking outward, I was able to reflect on my fears, their impact, and figure out what's an action that I can take to address it. And it has transformed the way that I deal with things. I'm not perfect at it. It's progress, not perfection. But the practice has transformed the way that I deal with my relationships. And I think I'm better at nurturing my relationships rather than trying to constantly push my view and feel like people have to live the way that I think that they need to live. They need to do things my way. So whether you believe or not, this process is absolutely about inner growth and finding peace within yourself. So every step that you take towards understanding and addressing your fears can bring you closer to a life of clarity. We've talked a lot about clarity over the past several days, and intention and purpose. So that's all I have for you today. Say hi to a stranger. I said hi to a stranger this evening. He was running past me, but I put a big smile on my face. He went by so fast we couldn't have a conversation. We just said hi. But I'm doing it. Say hi to a stranger. Thank you for joining me today on the Recovery Daily podcast. I will talk to you tomorrow.